takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down?
It is my joy to welcome Geri Weis-Corbley to this Magnolia podcast. She's the founder of the Good News Network. And I think I would just want to start to introduce you by way of some of the headlines, literally headlines about Geri's work as founder of Good News Network. The Washington Post dubbed her the Good News Guru and said she's out to prove that good news sells. Geri broke out of freelancing at CNN to launch the Good News Network in 1997. And if you go to the Google machine and Google good news, it's number one, good news on her website, pops up as gnn.org. And it serves millions of pages of really inspiring content, good news from around the world every day, every month. Another headline or quote is from Katie Couric's notebook. She said, quote, "The Good News Network is devoted to all the good news that's fit to print. When the headlines seem bleak, it's nice to know that some really good news is just a mouse click away." And I definitely have gone there many times when I feel like sobbing what's going on out in the rest of the world. It just really grounds me to come back to the Good News Network. NPR, all things considered, no gloom, no doom. They said, Weis-Corbley thinks an alternative to the grim fare offered by major news outlets is essential and traffic is up. That was from Michelle Norris. And WTOP radio said, good news is good for you. And the Washington Post said she's out to prove that good news sells. So I'll give you one more headline. I love all of these. I could go on and on. Newsday said, take heart, America. The Good News Network is a place on the web where you can go every day to renew your faith in the human race. So Geri has had 35 years of experience in TV production and news media. She's been a producer, director, an editor, videographer, author, and my friend. And she has proven to the world that there is an audience for good news. In 2021, Geri said that GNN had 17 million unique users and 40 million page views. She also has a book, which is somewhere behind me on my shelf. I won't jump out of my chair to find it, but her book is And Now the Good News. And it's a compilation of her favorite GNN stories. So before we get into your favorite, the good news, the best good news in the Good News Network, let's just start with how in the world, I mean, it's very courageous, I think, a brave move to quit CNN and create a good news network at a time that I never heard that good news sells.
I have a good founder's story because, I was in the news business and only for a month. And I could see, the assignments coming out and how much we were chasing the bad news in Congress on Capitol Hill. I worked in Washington, D.C. for 10 years in the news business, TV news. And so I said to my partner, there should be a good news channel. And he said, good news doesn't sell. And it kind of, put me in my place kind of thing. But I didn't believe him because at the time there were success stories with positivity. Oprah's Angel Network was very popular at the time. Reader's Digest always had a hero story on the cover, and Parade magazine as well. So I didn't buy into it, but of course I didn't. I stayed with the bad news for 10 years. And then when I started a family and quit the business, World Wide Web came along. And I remember the moment, actually. I was listening to NPR. I'm in the kitchen, got my six-year-olds at the table. And I'm hearing a story about the Bosnian War and the rapes that were going on. And I look and I thought, I wonder what is when is he old enough to be hearing this? And something about that moment made me, well, dang it, I need to do this. I could make a website. So I did, and that was 24 years ago.
How did you get the word out that this website existed?
I don't know how they found out, but within a few months, Women's World magazine did a little article on me, sent a photographer over. So we started getting publicity, I guess, right away, but I didn't grow the business at all. It just grew organically. And then when social media came along, in the beginning of Facebook, that really propelled me because I found that people were sharing. And so that was a great way to get the word out. But I never paid a dime for it. And, here I have the best SEO you could imagine with being #1 on Google. And I didn't pay a cent for it. It's just hard work.
I know that personally, but you've really have crafted your life around it also. I mean, this is it's an act of love as well as work for you.
Yeah,
and the work is no small
considered it.
thing.
Yeah, for years, I've always considered it my public service, instead of going to a soup kitchen. I spent a lot of time on this. And so, because I knew it would be good for people. And then it sort of came into my life as a philosophy, the Good News Network. I started realizing that really it's a life philosophy, looking at the positive in your kids instead of focusing on the negative. Let's focus on the positive.
Have
So
you
it became.
Have you also focused on, the positive psychology movement also? I mean,
Oh, yeah. I used to go to their global conferences or summits in DC and met the, grandfathers of the movement, Seligman, and did interviews with Tal Ben-Shahar, who was a Harvard lecturer who had the most popular Harvard course ever, which was positive psychologist. And he would recommend to all of his students that they look at Good News Network every day.
I think I've read that he had like 1,000 students, whatever. I mean, people really, spilling out of the auditorium. In some ways, it makes sense that it would be. I mean, these very stressed, overachieving kids would want to know, about positive psychology. How do you attract stories? How do you find them?
I've become a magnet pretty much. But so people send them to me. A lot of the links and the ideas people send to me, if people have their own things that are going on in their lives, they'll write a story or blog, and then I'll follow up with them, get more questions. So those do very well. These are people who have things spontaneously happen to them. Often a stranger has influenced or affected their lives in some way. And then, we have our sources that are our favorite web pages that we go to. The Guardian is my personal favorite media across the board.
Good one. Yeah. Yeah. Also one that happens to be passionate about climate change and is doing so much. I mean, really, that they're a go-to place to get good information on climate change. They started this thing called Covering Climate Now, which was getting other news organizations to cover climate more deeply.
Right.
So after you get a story, I mean, you're getting them from strangers also. You're getting them from people that you know, from and also randomly. How do you check them out?
Well, I call them or email, mostly do the work by email, and they send photos of the things that have happened. So, but I am quick to say, especially when sitting across from Roberta, I am not an investigative.
You.
I'm not an investigative journalist at all. My idea was for people to find the good news, they had to go to section C, page 28, or back in the day. my idea was to put all the good news in one place that's already out there. So we're curators, basically. As I said, I like The Guardian. If they have a story, we'll go to the business that, is involved, or the people. Usually it's a nonprofit or a corporation, and go look at their material and, write our own stories. So.
But you also have this underpinning, this theory of change about it in terms of what you're curating. Can you say a little bit about that in terms of the kinds of stories, talking to a wider audience also, what are you looking for?
There is so much good news going on out there.
You wouldn't know it from the daily headlines.
I mean, so I get so many emails, and I'm so sorry that I don't choose to focus on some of these that are very common. Rescuing people from fires, for instance, is very common across the world every day. So I'm looking, though, because I only earn money if people click. So I want to find the most interesting, most compelling stories there are. And one of those is energy independence and new breakthroughs in solar and geothermal and fusion. And so I have certain Google alerts set for that, because I found that people, and health breakthroughs as well. These are very popular on GNN, health breakthroughs. But also the surprise, the strangers, the surprise, the spontaneity, something that happens that comes up out of thin air, are the kinds of stories I like the best, that do very well. Someone helping someone spontaneously.
I enjoy all of those stories, but I have to say that I am very much drawn to the ones that you do about animals also, like the woman paddling next to the whale, or,
Yeah.
Some of those are, I guess they fall in the category of surprising.
Well, yes, animals is a favorite of ours. We love the animal stories. We don't go so far as, it's not like, again, I'm trying to be unique. I don't want to do every cute animal story, so we don't. But I love these. There was one about a fox who a guy was outside playing his banjo, and a fox wanders up, and he's being serenaded by this guy playing the banjo. And then he comes back for an encore, sitting and watching. That was so cute.
I thought loved that. And I see Jackie beaming also. That was a recent wonderful one. Can you go through some of your favorites and the kind of feedback that you've gotten? I mean, when either surprising that you didn't, unexpected, like, feedback that you've had,
unexpected,
or just ones that are tender to your heart?
Now, see, you said you wouldn't do this. No. Well, like I say, my brain is so filled with stories that have happened. So I need more help picking a favorite,
Like your children?
We had one. I'll speak one. No, I have a favorite child. And I tell him constantly in front of the other one.
Don't blurt it out.
There was a story that had almost 500,000 views 2 weeks ago. And this woman had a bumper sticker on her car. She had made it, a homemade bumper sticker, basically had a sign laminated, put it on her car. And it was something like, please don't end your life today. You are worth so much more than you think, or something like that. And the story was that a woman was coming out of a grocery store and went into the parking lot and saw this bumper sticker, and she was planning to end her life that day. And the bumper sticker saved her life. So
I remember that.
People love that story.
So powerful. But it was more than just telling that anecdote of what this one woman did and the impact that it had. You also provide resources, which I thought was really helpful, because there is a suicide crisis in our country. And so to tell an uplifting story and say, and here, and you can get help. Yeah, that was a memorable
That's
one.
one of the, when I was first starting out, I thought a Good News Network would be a real dynasty and be very big and make me rich, basically. And I guess my success didn't, come so much in money, but in the satisfaction of knowing that so many people with anxiety and stress and depression and panic attacks that have reached out to me and said that my news is helping them. So I just love that we put it out there and people, it's like a ripple, all kinds of ripples in a pond. So people I'm making a difference, and yet I'm in the grind every day,
Yes.
fighting with Google for 90 minutes today about a broken thing. And I forget sometimes that it really makes a difference in the world.
Well, you don't always hear about it, but you know that you do. I mean, those ripples are really powerful, and it's always a surprise and a delight when you do know, what the impact has been. I want to open it up to questions. And Jackie, do you want to go first?
Sure, thanks. Geri, I have a spiritual teacher, and she says that with every time you walk into a room, it's our responsibility to elevate the consciousness of the room. And I really believe that that's what the Good News Network does. It elevates the consciousness. And it's such a powerful antidote to everything that is out there, because I truly believe in the human spirit too. And the fact that there are so many more good stories than there are horrific ones. And the fact that you elevate all of us through your media is very, very powerful. I wonder, how do you actually go about this? I mean, are you a company of one? Do you have a team? What is the pragmatic piece behind everything that you do?
Yes, I do. I do earn enough money to have a team. I have an IT guy who's been invaluable and been with me over a decade. He's in England. And I have a managing editor, and she happens to be Scottish and living in Canada. And then my main writer, I have a couple of freelancers, but my main writer every day, 2 stories, is in Italy. So we're a global company, it seems, but very tiny. I just gave up a daily history column to that writer. I used to do a daily history column every single day, and he's now doing it. But I put out the newsletter every day and do the quote of the day, which is accompanied by a beautiful picture. And I have to do all my email, all the email for GNN, which is a big job.
That's really
Go ahead, Jackie.
Just a follow-up question. It's really spectacular. I think I have kind of two questions, if you don't mind. One is that, I think on a lot of our minds right now, there is the Russian war with Ukraine. And I try and limit my viewing of it because it truly gets too upsetting for me. So it's then when I go to Good News Network to get a lift. But I wonder, there are so many, the Ukrainians seem to be such a extraordinary community of people. Is there any sort of desire or ability to focus on some of the stories that are coming out of Ukraine that will, in fact, galvanize us towards an uplifting attitude as opposed to despair about the war?
Well, I don't know about that last part. I'm actually changing the attitude about what's going on. Mostly when these tragedies come up, if it's a mass shooting in Las Vegas or this, we do look for unique stories of individuals. We've featured about 6 stories from Ukraine, I would say. of people helping. And so we, and whenever there is a tragedy, you've got more good news coming out of it, because there are, people who are brave and people who are generous, like the rest of the world they're now buying goods, artistic creations on Etsy from people in the Ukraine to support them, things like that. Elon Musk sending over, I can't remember the number, dozens of his transponder things that give them free, or that will keep the internet on there. And he sent a truckload of these. It's based on a satellite situation. So, I'm always willing to look at the Ukraine heroes and generosity around that.
Yeah, those have been beautiful stories, Geri. And there are, as you say, so many of them, really. And
there was one. I wonder what you ladies would think of this. There was one sent to us. You should do this. I think CNN covered it. It was someone decided to get married on the front lines or on the border or something. Yeah. I didn't know if that was really worth it.
Oh, I saw it and I loved it.
You did.
Yes, it was just a surprise. Yeah, in the combat uniforms, and clearly she was very surprised and was handed flowers and
Oh,
yeah.
So it was a proposal.
Neat. What do others think? Did anybody else see that?
I thought it was wonderful. And in fact, so much so my husband said, "Hey, have you seen this on Good News Network?" And yeah, it was really lovely story. So yes.
It's still sitting on our assignment desk page. And I wasn't sure if it was going to, because I would have to check if the photo was usable, because that's going to be key for us. But
right.
Okay, I will look into that.
When you see these stories, when you curate these stories about people being generous and brave and beauty, you also uplift beauty on your site. I wonder, how it has changed you, Geri, if it's made a difference in terms of how you go about your day. You've been doing this for 25 years. How has it changed you, affected you?
Well, I spoke to that a little before about how I think good news is a philosophy for me now. So I look on the bright side. And if, Jackie was mentioning that she watches less news. I think some people are more sensitive than others to the news. And I'm one of those. I can't watch some movies. And those are, well, Schindler's List was real and others are real. But anyway, the point being, I need to focus on the positive. I really can't look at much news. As soon as the Trump thing started, the Trump-Hillary fight, and then, well, really when he won, I did an op-ed about that. But afterward, I couldn't watch the news. It was just breaking my heart every time. So I keep abreast of some things by doing this work. I keep abreast of the progress on climate change and the progress on plastic pollution and breakthroughs in health and such like that. So I kind of focus on that and leave the politics to other people. I try to bone up on politics in November before I vote. But I'm very sensitive, and I just I can't do it. Can't watch the news.
Well, the public discourse, the lack of civility is something that is palpable now.
Awful.
Has there been a change in what you get from readers? Do people?
Well, it's interesting to be in my position, because I was thinking about it the other day, and I bet we're close to 50-50 or 60-40 in if you were to say Republicans and Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you that it really is kind of half and half, sort of like the population.
That would go to humanity craving good news.
Mm-hmm. So we have to be careful. We're kind of careful about what we are careful about. We kind of try to stay away from anything that would put off readers, except the environment and and climate. That's the one issue. We are down 100%, and I don't care what you say. I ban people on Facebook because they say things about solar power and about climate. Climate isn't real. You're banned. You can't comment anymore on our Facebook page.
Wow,
So
that is really interesting. I did not know that.
100% in. Yep.
Yeah,
I won't have it with the comments about, fake,
right,
this is fake and
right.
solar
That
is
it's
not.
a big
They say
fraud.
EV. I think. Speaking of Russian bots or whatever, like I think people are paid to make comments on my site about
That could be.
electric vehicles. If I have a popular electric vehicle story, you'll start seeing these weird drop-by comments about EVs, not being positive at all or helpful, that they're, evil
Right.
or
Well,
not making a difference. Not evil, sorry. But
yeah. What are, as an EV driver, I
I know.
relish the stories that you do on electric vehicles, and I'm rooting for everybody. Yeah, and hoping
Did you see
that
today we have one going up today about a portable EV charger that you can put in your car in case you need to charge up.
Oh, cool.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool. What
Yeah.
are some stories on climate that because we're so used to it being negative about, that it's this climate crisis and the problems with climate justice and that we have 10 years and then it's over. What are the stories that you're focused on that make you feel like we're going to be okay? We're getting it together. For me, it's
Wow.
it's young people. I just feel like they are really activated and that they intend to have a future.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoy, any kind of conversation with young people who are activists in that space and who are demanding change.
Mm-hmm. Well, just the trends, the downward trends of coal and the upward trends of renewables, the LG going into production for jet fuel. I mean, these are huge. China just made a commitment to put 450 gigawatts of renewables, solar, wind, and another one, I can't remember. Couldn't be hydro, in deserts, in the Gobi Desert. And 450 gigawatts. Let's see, I don't know what that means, but in the article I read, they said that the total world output of the renewables now is 200 something. And so they were going to just double that and put it in the desert. So, I just see so many articles about renewable energy and scientists coming up with ways to make things that are not emission heavy, that are carbon neutral. So
Right.
it's
Yeah,
just so many of those stories that just makes me think that, that we're going to get there.
Right. Technology is definitely making incredible strides, and nature, Mother Earth, has all sorts of ways of keeping herself alive.
Yes, we had a story about old growth trees or old trees. Actually, their intake of carbon dioxide increases if there's more in the environment. Like, who heard of that? Who ever heard of that? I thought that was freaking cool. And the trees will be adjusting.
I think it was on Good News Network about whales and drawing down carbon also.
Oh yeah.
That
whales being one of the keys.
A great machine.
Yeah. Right.
And I want to bring you into the conversation. I know you have a question, so jump in.
Yeah. Well, I have a bunch of questions, but I think there's two that are related, Geri. One is it's my perception that news in general is still dominated by negative and fear-based stuff. And I'm wondering if there's research on, that's going to be more addictive than good news, or are they equally addictive? And there's something else structurally that's keeping the balance off. so we don't have as much, going on, actually having our news feed send us more good news. And so is it more addictive is really my question. And then do you feel like good news is catching on it more beyond your network? Do you feel like there is, oh, wow, yeah, it's more reporting is occurring. So anyway.
Yes, over the years, I think NBC was one of the first ones, the TV network. One year, they decided to do in the summer when, things were slow on Capitol Hill or whatever, they did a Making a Difference week, and they did stories for 5 days in a row about it. And they had never gotten I talked to the producer there, and they had never gotten so much mail ever. So they committed to doing one a week, and, used to see them on Fridays. But then that just was the start. That was the first time I saw it. And then soon, MSN had a good news section, and ABC, and everybody sort of started to add a page or something where they could highlight the good news. And there was a couple of studies showing that people wanted it. One was a New York Times did some research, and they found out their most shared stories were the ones that were related to wonder and awe. So probably like either an something that was found, ancient thing dug up, or it was in the universe, something that really created that awe and wonder. So that's one kind of notion that came up years ago, that maybe bad news isn't the most popular news. But yeah, so there's a lot of them today. And I'm proud to say that, HuffPost bulldozed into the whole media space, and they set up an entire section of good news and pounded it every day with news stories. And they weren't even able to catch me on Google. So no one has ever been able to pass me as to be the most authentic expert in the, like top thing. Your other question was about addiction. Yeah. I went to a seminar at George Mason University on resilience. And there was a gentleman, a scientist, a researcher there who just blew me away. He was so good. But he finally, explained what this, because I've been wondering too, they say good news didn't sell, but what is it, And he said it's evolutionary biology. And our brains, when we were all those tens of thousands of years, had to be more geared and more sensitive to the shock,
danger,
the scare, danger, fear and danger. Yeah. So these days, you probably have heard you have to have 3 times as many positive moments to equal the effect, that one negative one will do. So it's evolutionary. And
okay.
And
Geri, I think you also said you think it's good to aggregate the good news like into a section, right? Not just your network, but maybe in a newspaper as well, that there's a section of it. Is that what you said? Did I understand you correctly?
Well, for sure, not so much in newspapers, but yeah, in websites, to have a good news up on the top. Yeah.
Part of me wonders, what if it was interspersed? And so people couldn't just get on a roll with the negative, they'd be interrupted. Every other one would be, hey, here's some good news. On the other hand, here's what's
I feel like it, like in The Guardian is a good example. I mean, I think it would be interspersed if you're reading The Guardian, looking, but generally, it's been tough these days with the pandemic, and then first Trump, then the pandemic, and now the Ukraine. It's kind of hard, but yeah, I did see. I mean, that was one of the things that drew me to making the website, is they were scattered, so you kind of would run into them, like on the sports page. yesterday, NBA star just dedicated his entire season's salary to building a hospital in DR Congo, his home nation. And that's the second time I've covered a story exactly like that. Dikembe back in the 90s did the same thing. But anyway, so you can run into them as you're going through a newspaper. But I thought specifically for the depressed people of the world that they needed a place to go with all of it there.
Good point. Thank you.
I think about, there are little pockets. I mean, StoryCorps is not really a news, but they do, they curate stories, deep interviews that people do one-on-one with each other. And those stories make me laugh and cry. I mean, there are some really, and they're all going into the National Archives. And there's a reporter by the name of Steve Hartman on.
Oh, he's my brother.
He is,
of course.
I mean, everyone has a story, and he's a really good writer, I think.
He is.
He's the best. He does find that everybody has a story, and these are very well, not always positive, but deeply human. Stories.
These are always positive, though.
Yeah, and usually
one of the reasons I like him. They're always positive.
Yeah.
Some of the things,
it can be going through some harrowing crisis, but coming out.
Yeah. Totally. Yes. Yeah. Overcoming is always my MO. If something is being overcome, then it is good news.
Yes.
So you can include then the negativity in the beginning or whatever.
Right. So if I could double click on this thing about clickbait, what is clickbait? I mean, where you must, especially with social media now, see where things get shared, how they get shared, or do you have some?
Well, the most important thing to getting my stories shared is the photo and the headline. And I must say, we walk right up to the line of clickbait with headlines because we need clicks. We have to actually do it, but we're never lying. We're never like we're trying never, of course, to lead them astray, but
no, but your headlines are good. They suck me in. It's like, I want to know more.
Thank you. By leaving out a detail or two, that kind of helps a headline from my perspective. You've seen these headlines where these foods are linked to fewer heart attacks by 20% or something.
See, and then you want to click on it. Yeah. What foods?
Instead of, right. So, I mean, people might say that's clickbait. I'm guilty if it is, because I'm sorry, I'm playing kind of the game.
No, but
and it is
actually asking,
because we have 650,000 people on Facebook that are our fans that have followed us. Facebook only puts our stories on the news feed of 5% of those followers. So we have to fight for every view because of Facebook's algorithms.
And what is it? How does their algorithm work against you? Because people think that negative.
They think that if a person, that any Facebook user, they believe that you would rather see your sister's picture of her dog than this news company you have followed. If you don't comment on stories like Good News Network stories, if you don't put any comments in or share them, you will see fewer and fewer and fewer in your feed. But also, they did a major overhaul this year in 2021 that reduced our reach by catastrophic 90%. Fewer people were seeing our stories in Facebook just because they are deeming them that the people don't want to see them, that they'd rather see. And, you guys have heard about the Facebook looking for fighting, like if you disagree or fighting is what brings people back, so that they've kind of prioritized that as well.
Wow. Yeah, you've really lived through it in terms of these algorithms. The question I was asking about the clickbait, really, and that's sort of a pejorative term that I hadn't thought about it that way. I'm thinking just more about what do you see get shared? Is there a theme to any of that?
It's really fascinating, Roberta, because, having been in news this long, I still cannot, with much accuracy, predict what will be popular. I cannot. And it's weird. I mean, I've been doing this for so long, and yet we'll see a story come. I'll say that is going to be popular. That is going to do well, and it flops, and vice versa. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is hard to fathom. It is unfathomable. I felt the same way when I was doing, 25, 30 years of investigative reporting. I would always be surprised about what people reacted to or did not. It was not something.
It really is fascinating.
Sarah has a question.
Some dog and cat stories just don't do well. It's weird.
Sarah, jump in.
I have kind of a two-part question. Did you ever dream that GNN would turn into what it is today when you first started? And what's your vision for the future of Good News Network?
I dreamed that it would be 5 million times bigger. So one of the things I would tell someone starting out is no matter how much faith or belief or that you have in your business, you really just don't know how it's going to go. I really thought that it would be so much bigger. So, but I did happily, I did finally reach a point. I think I was either in 2020 or 2021 where I could consider myself satisfied with the progress or the success that I had had to that point. Finally, just reached a plateau. Okay, I'm satisfied, but I thought it would be so much bigger. But to your other question, I think someone else, if I had money and backing and other people involved, it could be 5 million times bigger. And that's why I would like, my vision now is to find I have a partner. I gave a piece of the company to, and he's always searching. And I hope that one day we find the right cohort or group of people to take it over, to buy GNN and take it to the next level, which it really deserves to be. I couldn't do it on my, I reached this is all I can do. I can't do anymore. And so I think someone else could, with money and people, it could be crazy big. I still believe it.
Well, you have to dream big, and that's what entrepreneurs do.
Yep.
And so you haven't thrown in the towel. You're still doing it. You're still growing. And I think now more than ever, there is this hunger for good news, for a relief from, so much sadness in the world, so much despair.
You guys might be interested to hear that every time there was a major tragedy since I started this, there has been a huge spike in the viewership. 9/11, on that day and the next day, people, and we were only 4 years old at the time, so we didn't have a lot going on. I didn't post, I still had little kids, so it was smaller, but the traffic went after 9/11. Yeah. Then when Wall Street tanked in 2008, boom, 45%, it stayed there. So the tragedies, it's interesting. It makes people realize that they need it because they're hearing so much bad news. So yeah, I just thought you might want to hear that.
Laura has a question for you, Geri.
Geri, this is so fascinating. Thank you. One question I have is, what advice might you give to more mainstream media outlets to incorporate some of what you've learned about the power of good news into the way reporting and news are done, right? So is this always going to be a niche thing, or is there a way to integrate it more into the way we report and digest the news more generally?
Yeah, there's a movement that dedicated people are behind, the solutions journalism movement. There's a guy in England that has done a lot of that. But indeed, it's doing stories that take more time. The reason, to my thinking, the reason that a lot of these, especially local news, a lot of bad news gets covered because it's easy to cover. It's an event. It's a shooting, a fire. So they can go there, wrap it up, boom, and it's in the can. However, these trends, the positive trends in the world, or, the other things are in depth. Obviously, Roberta knows about in-depth stuff taking time. But so I think it's easy for assignment editors to give out these easy stories, but I hope that there's more. I don't know how we're going to really get it into the heads of these assignment editors, but people need to hear about the solutions out there. We can't just, it's like feeding a child junk food all the time. They're going to get used to it. They're going to expect it. But if you give them healthy foods like watermelon and peaches and things like that, then they'll want them. Carrots, they'll ask for them. They'll start eating more healthy. And it's the same with good news. I mean, I think if the public started getting more of the solutions journalism, that they'd want them more. But especially because I think with the amount of information, we try to keep our stories short short so that you can get it. Like I like the ones that say, okay, here, I think it's Christian Science Monitor. Here's a longer version if you have time, kind of thing.
Right. And Frontline does that as well. If you want to, you can click to go to the whole interview if you want. It's an interesting
a minute and a half.
Technology provides that.
Yeah. So I think if people saw more short stories that were positive, that are difficult to cover, but sure.
Yes.
Excuse me.
The Solutions Journalism Network has had really good stats in terms of getting newsrooms to sign up to dig deeply into stories that are about solutions. And they're really gathering a lot of data too around it to show the impact that it has. And I guess how many eyeballs or, how many clicks, whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's good news too. I mean, you started it, and you still are number one when you go to the Google machine and say, I need good news, you come up, that's where you go. But it really is, I really believe that it's a trend. Darcy, you have a question, and then we're going to go to Geri for her final. I cued her in that we're going to ask her about her actions for us.
Sure. Geri, as you probably know, we're all about amplifying the voice of women and, really with a kind of a spotlight on young women, teen girls. And you mentioned, how could you possibly put together a cohort of, who might follow in your footsteps? And we've got a couple of great examples, one in Pakistan, one in Europe, cohorts of teen girls really studying, researching, climate justice, all aspects of climate, and also in Pakistan around the issues that women and girls face. What advice would you give to young girls? And, would it be worthwhile to explore putting together a cohort of teen girls, young women around stepping into this space, stepping into your footsteps?
Well, my advice is follow your dreams, follow your bliss, follow that which you can't not do. It's like a sand in an oyster. It just keeps something that you are so passionate about. You just need to do it. If they're passionate, whatever they're passionate about, if it's skateboarding when you're not allowed to skateboard in that country, or it's climate justice, but you just, and it's not only follow your bliss, but it's follow your blisters. So you got to put in the work. You got to keep at it. I have a lot of willpower. I can just basically do anything I put my mind to it. So I would say that that's true for especially young girls who grow up in societies that are challenging them, that are hard. I think these people, they have a lot more character than if life was easy around them. They're going to have a lot more character and a lot more, strength.
Well, Geri, I hadn't heard that take on follow your bliss, also follow your blisters, but I know that you have done that. And we have these last two questions that we always ask our Magnolia guests. And one is, what are 3 calls to action that anyone can do? Give us 3 calls to action.
That I would want them to do for Good News Network? Is that what you mean?
For the world.
Oh my goodness. Well, I could say unequivocally that would the one thing I would say is the same for both, which is get your daily dose of good news, because especially activists, they get so deep into problems sometimes that it's hard to continue. It's hard to get through a month.
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah.
Yeah, activists need good news.
Self-care. It's like self-care.
It is. It's like a vitamin G.
That's what I was thinking. It's like vitamins, but vitamin G.
Yeah. Instead of having all bad news, you need a vitamin G. So my advice is to get our little morning jolt. It's just 3 or 4 headlines Monday through Friday. Sign up for that free email and it will help you rewire your brain. You could read it at night or in the morning. It's because then you can go out in the world and, it's been proven that if you see a bouquet of flowers on your table or good news in your inbox, that it's going to actually carry through for hours and hours into your day. So
yes. Yeah. And finally, what advice do you have?
The other one was the follow your bliss and follow your blisters.
And what advice do you have for other women who want to make a difference?
Don't give up. That's the only failure, is if you give up. Otherwise, and here's one. I was a young mom at the time, even though I had plenty of will and plenty of toughness. I still was a mom, and I found the time to do this. The kids would wake up at 6 or whatever. I got up at 5 so I could work on the website. So there's no excuse, really. If you have something that's been put in your heart, I believe it was put in my heart to do. I was supposed to do it. That's why it would never stop keep coming up in my head. So just, even if you're a young mom of 3, you can find the time. Get up earlier. Just do it just put pen to paper, and it motivates you once you take that first step.
That is very inspiring. So I just want to thank you for being our good news guru and for being a pioneer in terms of giving us a place to go for good news. And I just want to say gnn.org, right? Again?
Yes.
Okay. And you can also sign up for Geri's newsletter, which lands in my inbox every weekday. And I really enjoy it.
We also have a free app.
Yeah, I'm not on that. I will go right, I will sign up for the app.
Well, it's the same. I'm pretty much the same. So, but you can get
But it's
everything
another
that's
way
on
of
our
looking at
website.
it. Right,
Yeah, you can look at it on an airplane, for instance,
Right,
and not
right.
have to be connected. So that's the obvious great news about having it on an app.
Well, thank you for reminding us that we all need vitamin G.
It was such a pleasure. It was great meeting all you great ladies.
Oh, thank you, Geri.
Hey,
Thank you,
Dorsey.
Jerry.
Yes, thank you so much.
Jerry.
Jackie. It was fun. Thanks,
Yeah.
Anne. All you guys, Sarah, Tanya.
What happens when a woman takes power? What happens when she won't back down? What happens when a woman takes power? What happens? What happens? What happens?